like to open the meeting, everybody. Very good to see you all here this dark evening, and the nights are drawing in, you've probably noticed. So I'd like to start the meeting with apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Palmer, Councillor Mead, Councillor Victory Malcolm, and possibly Councillor Victory Fran as well, by the look of it. Christine Wild, Councillor Wild, and Councillor Owenson. So that's everybody I've received apologies from. I'd like to ask item number 2 if there are any declarations of interest. No. See everybody shaking their heads, so no declarations of interest. All right, very good. Right, so moving on to item 3, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Are we all happy they are an accurate representation? Yes. Could I have a proposer? Thank you very much, Councillor Allen, and Councillor Wood as a seconder. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so Chair's announcements, item number 4. I'd like to introduce the officers in attendance this evening. Very pleased to welcome to my left Simon Jones, Development Manager, who's going to be presenting on the application this evening. And to my right, Rachel Charrington Walker, you'll all know, our legal advisor. Jennifer Hilton Trout, Democratic Services Officer. Is this your first one, Jen? Yeah. Jen's first meeting, so welcome, Jen. And Alison Freeman, also from Democratic Services. Thank you very much, Ali. I will come on to introduce our applicant shortly. I'd like to say item 5, there is no update sheet for this application. And so moving swiftly on to item 6 to announce the application, which is quite surprisingly perhaps to those of us who know the area, in West Ward, and possibly a surprise to the councillors members in question. No. We did not have a site visit, and so I'm now going to pass over to Simon Jones, our Development Manager, to present the application and the officer recommendation. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. We have an application before us for a permission in principle for the proposed erection of one dwelling house at Bluebell Cottage, Dragon Lane, Lysington. This is the site, edged red, showing it in relationship to the surroundings, cottage next door, Lybrook Cottage. And that shows the site in aerial photograph. You can see it's sort of an edge of a larger wooded area. Here's some constraints that relate to the site and surroundings. So we can see here there's some ancient woodland nearby to the northwest. Local wildlife site hatched in green along the brook, the watercourse there, and the pond. Triple SI and the impact zone for that. Tree preservation orders partially overlapping the site on its western edge there. Local flood zones along the brook. Surface water flooding extent mainly confined to the road there, to the lane there. Not surprisingly. The significant gap sites lies within that. Nearest public rights of way over to the west. And we've got some images of the site. So here's a view of the existing entrance to the site. Another view of it. And then we've got some views along the Dragon's Lane. You can see the sort of nature and character of that approach to the site. So As we've said, the application site is it's on the eastern side of Dragons Lane, close to Bluebell Cottage. The application site is located approximately 660 metres to the southwest of the development boundary at Lysinton, and is bounded by vegetation to the northwest, southeast, and southwest. It's within the Malvern Neighbourhood Town Plan area, so those policies are referred to in the report, and there's a tree preservation order that covers part of the site. Chairman, the application before you being a permission in principle application, and forgive me, I'm not sure if this committee has had many of these before it, or indeed whether this is the first it's had, but probably not the first yet. But I just direct you, because I won't repeat everything that's in the report, but at paragraphs, particularly paragraph 7.1.2, at the beginning of the officer appraisal section, it advises members that at the permission in principle stage, only issues relevant to the following in principal matters are considered, which are location, land use, and amount of development. Now, with many proposals, obviously they raise a whole host of issues which may or may not be relevant or material planning considerations, and these type of applications are quite light touch in looking at the very basic broad brush principles of whether a type of use would be acceptable, usually a residential use, and then all the other issues which may be pertinent are then, if permission in principle is acceptable, are dealt with at what's called the technical detail stage, which is a sort of second stage that follows. It's a little like outline and reserve matters, but with an outline and reserve matters application, more of the issues are important at the outline stage, and less at the reserve matters stage, perhaps, other than the details. So in this case, it's sort of a little the other way around. But we're confined really to looking at those three issues, and then members will note from the report that the recommendation is one of refusal, but the key element of that refusal reason relates to location or sustainability, and the relevant sections, the key sections on that in the report are from 7.2.12 through to 7.2.16, which covers in some detail why your officers consider the location isn't a sustainable one, and therefore why permission in principle shouldn't be granted for the proposal. Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Simon, for that. And I hope everybody's had a chance to review the materials provided and perhaps even visit the site as well. Okay, we have got no representation this evening. Sorry, okay, we've got no representation this evening from the Parish Council and no objector. So I shall move to the applicant, Ian Whitey, and if you'd like to take a seat at the public speaking desk. And as I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 minutes, which will be timed by my colleagues. Thank you.
Good evening. Contrary to the planning officer's observations, the location is well connected to both public rights-of-way and established cycle routes, with in excess of 54 public rights-of-way within a mile radius south of the development. The planner provides a perception of this location being heavily reliant on a motor vehicle due to poor standard of walking and cycling opportunities. I believe this opinion was formed from information off a desktop rather than a site visit. Dragons Lane is widely used by the local community, offering a safer option to horse riders, dog walkers, ramblers and cyclists. And as a resident, I believe these movements outnumber that of vehicles. This demonstrates the quality, safety and usability of the lane. Whilst bus services are limited, under the provisions of approved housing developments within Lysington, developer contributions will fund improvements in both local bus services and school transport provisions. This directly addresses concerns that the proposed development would be poorly connected to key services by sustainable transport mode. Some precedent cases are several comparable developments. Some are outside the development boundary and some also within the significant gap, including 35 houses on land adjacent to Elmhurst Farm. This was refused but granted on appeal, with the inspector concluding that the site was sustainable location for development given the level of services and facilities in Lysington. This site is only 0.1 of a mile from this application site and effectively at the top of Dragon's Lane. 2 dwelling houses at Sinton Meadows approved, 2 dwelling houses at Instones refused but granted on appeal, single dwelling house at Sunningdale approved, dwelling house on land adjacent to Instones approved, 18 dwellings on land off the A4103. This is approved recently, and again it's effectively at the top of Dragon's Lane. 52 houses off the A4103 approved. Recent approvals for over 110 dwellings in Lysington have demonstrated that this area must be considered as a sustainable location, with this application enjoying the same access to amenities and transport links as these developments. These approvals clearly establish a precedent demonstrating that sustainability has not been an issue for refusal and therefore should not be a reason to refuse this application. In summary, the proposed development at Bluebell Cottage is well connected to local
you.
amenities.
Thank you, Ian. I'm afraid we've run out of time, so thanks very much for your representation. Okay, I shall move on now to our ward members, and I understand Councillor Rain is going first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for what we've just been listening to. That was very helpful to hear that perspective. My own view, however, is that there are a lot of reasons why I think this would be a difficult application to give approval to. I suppose principally, well, firstly, is the width of the road. It's a very narrow lane. Obviously, it is a traffic routeway, but not much traffic on it. I didn't see any traffic visited this morning. Didn't see a car in the time I spent there at all. So it's not a throughway in the sense, or a routeway that's regularly used. I think that's not necessarily a problem. You come to it early off the main road, but it is a narrow road. And I think the thing that really particularly struck me as a site, it is surrounded by trees. It's a lovely piece of land. And as the tree officer has picked up, an issue of protecting tree roots would considerably narrow the area that it would be appropriate to have footings and a structure. So the site, as it were, as a building site, I feel would be very constrained by that. I think the chances of an accident in that road for pedestrians is a risk if it was to be a site of through traffic or more through traffic, because there is really nowhere to go on both sides of the road there, sort of steep sort of boundary edges. So I'd be very worried about development in that road, really, simply because of the safety of pedestrians. It is, of course, quite a long distance from ranges of shops and other facilities. Lysington's, I think the report said, 1 kilometre away. I think it's a long kilometre. It doesn't feel like we're very near Lysington there. Secondary school, 2.7 kilometres, I saw somewhere in the report. Doctor's surgery, 4.6 kilometres. So it is relatively isolated from a range of often required services. Pub, 1.2 kilometres. So On balance, I think the officer's judgment on this one is where I am too. I think it's not a priority for us to be encouraging and supporting development in sites like this, in corners of our area like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rain. Councillor McVeigh, would you like to add some words?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Although not very many more words, I don't think. And having listened to what John's had to say, I'm in a full agreement with him. And I've obviously read the report and I've been to visit the site. And like John, I'm leaning towards officers' recommendations with this one for all of the reasons stated in the report, really, particularly around the sustainable location element. And obviously we are limited to looking at a planning in principle application. I'm obviously willing to listen to the debate that might follow, listening to other people's views. And I may make a recommendation following hearing everybody else's views, but happy to listen.
McVeigh, thank you for that. Councillor Bennett, you wanted to contribute.
Yes, the ponds look artificial. Is this site got a history of quarrying or mineral extraction upon it? Well,
I don't think so. I can't pretend to be an expert, but I understand those are fishing ponds.
well,
not
yes, they would be
artificial.
now, but
No, but
if
I-
you look at them, the way that they're structured suggests they're artificial. And I
Yeah.
just wondered whether there'd been any land survey done as to what was going on before.
I don't know of any quarrying in that site, not at all. It's
That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
well, I'd be very surprised, but yeah.
Because it is quite a sophisticated and commercial looking operation. So therefore, again, like we had the recent application where we found out that basically there was pollution underneath the ground, has there been any survey of the land that this house was going to be sat on? Because basically I would suggest that would have been a necessary requirement for me to be impressed with this. Anyway.
Your comment, I'd be very surprised if it's anything other than completely virgin land. Having looked at it, it doesn't look like it's ever been sort of moved or anything. But yeah, take your point, Councillor. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think from having read the report, I suppose it seems to hinge on this idea of sustainability. So I'd like to ask Simon, how robust is the assessment that it is not sustainable? It wasn't my reading of it in the first instance. I thought it could be sustainable, but I'd like to know a little bit more about really the criteria that have been used to come out on the side that it's actually not sustainable. And I think that's the crucial point in this.
Well, fortunately, I think, in my view, the case officer has assisted members there by referencing a number of documents in the evaluation of the different modes of travel, which are set out from 7.2.12 through to 7.2.16, and it's referring to a number of county council documents which set out sort of walking distances, cycling distances, distance to bus stops, that is considered to be the sort of acceptable limits, and then comparing this proposal to those limitations. There's that's the baseline for making that assessment, really, as well as the quality of the route, which we've seen from the photographs.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. I think like John, it's about questioning the application of when we talk about sustainability, Because if I cast my mind back a couple of months ago, we know that we had that planning application where there was proposal to put something in the Longdon area, and none of which that site was connected to in any which shape or form. In fact, it was probably further away from any public amenity, etc., and in a flood zone, and we were encouraging people to pursue it. So I think it's just that question that we ask ourselves about sustainability, and hearing what the applicant said around recent appeal successes, just that in mind, with a view, you know, there's an existing property there, Leabrook Cottage, and I do not know this site, and I haven't paid a site visit, you know, so I'm completely reliant on what's being said in the room. But I am finding the claim that it's an unsustainable location, hearing from the applicant and looking at the figures the officers put in there in relation to thinking about how we apply this in other applications isn't sitting entirely well with me. So I'm interested to hear what further debate and maybe any further comments from the planning officer on that basis about how we apply.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watkins. Do you want to add anything, Simon? No, you've got your mic on, by the way. Councillor Wood.
It's all right, Jules will do. Yeah, just for clarification, really. I mean, this site is on the edge of the significant gap. That isn't referenced, I don't think, in the officer's refusal reasons. It probably is by policy, but it isn't mentioned. Is that not significant? I know it's right on the edge.
I would say that it's not of a scale that would harm the objectives of the significant gap in terms of what that's trying to do, you know, which is about spatial separation, usually between larger settlements. So one dwelling on its own on the edge of the gap isn't going to prejudice the whole function of the gap. Obviously, one has to be mindful of incremental applications over time, but we don't get too many of them. I think, or we've resisted larger proposals where there would clearly be a significant erosion of the gap. This isn't one of those, and that's why it doesn't feature in the refusal reason. So clearly, that what the case officer was aware of that constraint, but it doesn't feature in the refusal reason, which looks purely at sustainability.
I'm ready. It's all right. I'm now ready. It's obviously a commercial enterprise. Do we know roughly how many people go there a year and how they actually access it? Which road? Do they come down Dragon's Lane to access it? Interested to hear the answer. How do they access the Fishes Lakes? Okay, all right, that's fine. I'm just interested to hear if they all came zooming up and down Dragon's Lane or not. Okay, so that's good. I'm looking at. I had 3 hours of planning training yesterday at the county council with a barrister who kept trying to persuade us that what you had to decide was what is the least worst option. And I'm slightly concerned that if we turn this down, it will almost certainly go to a planning inspector on appeal. We haven't got a 5-year land supply, and if it goes to a planning inspector, we'll basically lose full control over this, and that concerns me. So I'm happy to listen to other people. I don't know how I'm going to vote at the moment. but I think members should be very careful, because if it does go to a planning inspector, that's game over, isn't it? I think. I can't see how we can defend this particularly well, but obviously officers know more than I do about it. Thank you.
Very well said, Martin, in terms of your view of the officer's opinion. Okay, I mean that in the sense of the recommendations we've been given. Okay, any other comments from, Neville, Councillor Mills?
Looking at the quantity of water that is around there, has anybody asked what the wildlife is like? I'm thinking now, well, we know there's fish there because that's why they go. I'm thinking of things more like newts and other water life that accumulate around this quantity of water.
Councillor Mills, thank you very much for your question, but can I just say that these issues are not material to our consideration for this planning in principle. We are advised very strongly that we look at location, land use and the amount of development. So, yeah, well, is it land use? Oh, right. Oh, 742. Would you like to read that to us then?
Biodiversity and protected species are covered at 742 in the report, which sort of concludes that information relating to the impact of a proposal on biodiversity would be expected to be submitted as part of a technical details consent stage application, which is the second stage if it crosses the first hurdle of the permission in principle.
If nobody else wants to speak right this moment, I'd also like to make a contribution, and I do share the concerns of Councillors Gallagher, Watkins, and I think to some extent Allen, as I've understood your contributions so far. I do know this site very well. I live not nearby, but in the general vicinity. And I would agree with Councillor Rain that Dragon's Lane is not used hardly at all by any traffic. Occasionally I do use the road as a sort of route through to Malvern if there are roadworks on the Lysinton Road, but you can see by the state of it, it's not used a lot. There are no objections from highways, no objections from neighbours. And there is, as I think was mentioned by the applicant, a lot of appeals which have been granted permission by the inspector or following appeal, and there is a lot of development in the area. I also think that a kilometre to a shop and 1.5 kilometres to the school is pretty nearby, especially as Councillor Watkins said, in light of previous applications that we've had where we've been encouraged to consider granting the application. So I do find it quite hard to agree with the officer in this case, the officer recommendation. So I am probably minded to disagree with the recommendation, but I'm again, like everybody, interested to hear if there's any further debate or indeed recommendations from our members representing the ward.
Has everybody contributed that wants to contribute? I don't want to jump in, but I am happy to propose that we accept officer's recommendations and refuse the application on the grounds stated. And I need a seconder, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a recommendation and a proposer and seconder. So I think, Rachel, if we're okay, we'll take it to the vote.
Okay, Raise your voting cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 in favour. All those against. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 against. Abstentions. Okay.
So the motion to refuse in accordance with officer recommendation is carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, members, for the debate and for your vote this evening. And I will now close the meeting. Thank you all.